If you too have ever thought, did I go too far with decluttering? Well, we should talk more about that. Hello friends, I'm Mary Beth and welcome to At What Cost. Now, if you have seen this video right here, there's a very good chance you have. It's my most popular video and the one that many of you watched just before you subscribed, so thank you. If you have seen that video, you already know that we got rid of about 80% of our stuff. And at this point, that number is actually probably higher. Maybe though, you too are wondering about that other 20%. Why did we keep those things? And is there anything we would not have kept if we had to do it over again? We're gonna talk about that today. So first off, why 20%? Why did we keep only 20% of our belongings? Well, let me explain first. This was not a goal. The 20%, getting rid of 80% of our stuff, keeping only 20% of what we had, it was never the goal. And it still isn't the goal. It's nice to know those kinds of things, and it certainly helps people to get motivated that we have gotten rid of all of these things and how did we do it? But ultimately, the goal of minimalism in our family was to find balance and to thrive. We were in a survival state. And there is a sector of minimalism that really is about survival. You have the least amount of stuff that you possibly can, and you just have enough to survive. That has never been my focus with minimalism. We don't want to just simply survive. We want for our family to thrive. So do I have more than what the typical minimalist has? Not a whole lot more, but I certainly am not down to like one pair of jeans, a bodysuit, and a toothbrush. But we did end up with about 20% of the things that we had, not just in our home, but also in a couple of storage units that we had. I have mentioned these storage units in the last few videos, but basically we were getting ready to sell our home and we had way too much stuff. Our realtor basically told us we had to get rid of at least 50% of the things in our home. And we felt like they were all things that we needed. And so we put them in a storage unit. And then we had to get a second storage unit when we filled the first one up. And then we moved into a much larger home and still needed the 2 storage units because we didn't have space for all the things that we had. So of that 80%, I would say about 50% of it came from storage units and 50% of it came from our actual home that we live in every single day. But the 20% is all stuff that's here now. We don't have any storage units anymore, and we haven't for quite some time. So what made the cut and what maybe wouldn't make the cut if I were going to approach this again? So first off, the things that made the cut were the things that we used every day, the everyday essentials. I also looked at our decluttering through the lens of our daily habits. So for example, in the kitchen, my kids eat breakfast at home. They typically eat lunch at school, unless it's the weekend or a school break, and then we have dinner at home. But I work full time and I can't be hand washing dishes. In fact, the mornings are somewhat chaotic. I need to be able to take those dishes and toss them in the dishwasher and still have room for dishes left in the evening time. So our routine dictated how much we actually ended up keeping in our kitchen. I kept enough for us to be able to have 2 meals, but got rid of enough so that everything would fit in the dishwasher. So I kept a lot of the things that we were using on a regular basis. But even within that category, I scaled back. So water bottles, for example, our kids take a water bottle to school every day. And especially living here in Georgia, it can get quite hot at the end of the school year. Even, who am I kidding? Even into February, it can be a little bit warm. And certainly in the fall, they need a good amount of water. So all of those little water bottles, those like Dollar Tree water bottles I would pick up, or the 98-cent ones that were cute at Walmart and I could put them in an Easter basket, they just didn't make the cut because they didn't hold enough water to get my kids through the day. So even though we were using them, they weren't all that useful, and we had other things that fit our needs way better, so we kept those. Another area that we dramatically decluttered was in our towels, our bath towels specifically. We went down to 1 towel per kid and 2 towels per adult. I had an extra set for our guest room in case we had guests that came to visit. And this is one of the items that I wish I would have gone further with. I know what you're saying. I know. How could I have done that? Nobody's going to be sharing towels. Trust me. Just hear me out here. I kept probably 4 to 5 towels that were tucked away in a drawer in our bathroom that nobody ever used, and they were for emergencies. Now, we've never used those. In fact, I just took them all out of a cabinet the other day, washed them, and put them in a donation bag because we're just not using them. There has never been an emergency in our home that we actually needed those bath towels for. And we have had things happen. My kids have had stomach bugs and thrown up everywhere. People have had potty accidents. Those times are so few and far between that I have just either used paper towel when it was something that I just was not going to like wash and use that towel again for. You know what I'm talking about. Or we would just use our regular towels and run a little bit of bleach through it. Oh, I did forget. I have one extra towel for our dog. Anytime he needs a bath or his little patty paws get way too dirty outside because he likes to dig a little every now and then, we do have a separate towel that we keep just for him. Another area that we reduced dramatically, but I really don't think I went far enough with, was our kids' books. And I know, don't come for me with the books, with the kids' books. If anybody is an advocate for literacy, it is me. I work in the early childhood ed industry, and literacy is incredibly important. But 60 books per kid is just not necessary. They get so focused on a few books and they want them read over and over and over again. And guess what? It's actually really good for their literacy, for them to have repetition and to be able to ask questions about those books. Even though they have read them maybe 100 times, you can still find things in that book that you can ask questions about, talk through scenarios, maybe even explore what an alternate ending would look like to a book. Ultimately, my kids really only like a handful of books at a time, and I could have donated far more than I ever did the first go round, and we donated quite a few. Now let's talk about everybody's least favorite subject, sentimental items. I know, we don't ever want to get rid of those things. We had quite a few sentimental items, and I use that term with air quotes because I have some pretty strong opinions about sentimental items that have developed through this process. I think a lot of the things that we hang on to for sentimental reasons are not actually all that sentimental. Now, I think sentimental items are very biblical to keep. I think we see a lot of times, especially in the Old Testament, where God designates tangible items to remember who he is, what he has done for his people, and what he will do in the future. I mean, if we look at the Ark of the Covenant, if you're doing a chronological reading plan, you probably talked about the Ark of the Covenant recently, or you will. It's filled with things to remind the people of God's faithfulness. So it is beneficial for us to have sentimental items. But many of us hang on to things for all the wrong reasons. Maybe this item doesn't actually spark all that much sentimental value to us, but because it belonged to someone that we treasure, we now want to hang on to this item. When it came to some of this kind of memorabilia, sentimental, like things that my kids had used, I kept a lot more of that stuff than what I actually should have. In fact, in the years after that initial purge, I have still continued to go through those items and purge even more. I know that category can be very difficult when it comes to decluttering, and I actually have talked about sentimental items quite a bit, and I know we will in the future too, but there is a playlist that's all about sentimental items, and I will link it in the description below. But I do think I could have gone a lot further with sentimental items than I did initially. Some other stuff that I would not keep again would be cleaning supplies. You know, I hung on to a lot of stuff that we still, even a year later, in just maintaining what we had decluttered, I still had cleaning supplies that I was hanging on to that after that initial purge, I just was not using. I had either found a product that I really liked and had anticipated that when it ran out, I would use this other product. and I would either forget that it was there and just buy more of what I liked, or I did use it and discovered I didn't actually like it all that well. I think when it comes to cleaning products, the most beneficial thing that we can do is find the product that we like and stick with it. When it comes to cleaning, it's really more about the frequency than it is the actual product, at least maybe in the beginning. I know in our master bedroom shower, for example, I have struggled to find a good cleaning method for that area. It's just kind of awkward and difficult, and the things that I have tried in the past didn't necessarily work. But once I found a good solid cleaning product for it, I just need to stick with that. It's tempting. It's tempting when you see it on Instagram or Pinterest and everybody's talking about how wonderful this product is or this tool is. And we can be very drawn to wanting to improve this process in our home. But more often than not, I have found that my tried and true products are the ones I really want to stick with. Let's talk about everybody's second least favorite category, clothes. Oh, I kept way too many clothes. I was really resistant in the beginning to try that sort of capsule wardrobe that everybody who's into minimalism talks about. I don't know. It just didn't seem like it was for me. I really wanted a lot more of a variety of clothing. And I was trying in the beginning really hard to keep the clothes that fit the roles that I serve in my life. So I do work from home, which means I am working at home. I can dress a lot more comfortably. But when I go into our office, I need to be in business attire. And that doesn't happen as frequently, but it does happen. So I would set aside some clothes for that. And then I had clothes for when I went to church. And then I had clothes for when there was a date night or something I would kind of have to dress up for that wasn't as formal as a suit or a business attire, like legit business attire. And while I still think that is a really good way to get your wardrobe under control and to decide what kinds of clothes you need so that you do have what you need for the different roles that you serve, I just kept way too much in all of those categories. If I don't go to the office very often, I can really mix and match some of the things that I would wear to church with maybe some of my other things. I just kept way more than I needed to. And especially when it came to church and going out, I wanted to have a variety because I thought that people would remember that I just happened to wear the same 3 dresses to church every time. But as far as I can tell, they haven't said anything. Nobody has really noticed. And if they have been kind enough to not say anything to me. And at this point, I'm going to go with no news is good news. Now, what about toys? So we started about 5 years ago, which means my kids were probably like 4, 6, and 7, somewhere in there. And we had a lot of toys. We had a whole playroom, and then they also had toys in their bedrooms, and then we had toys in our camper, and we had toys at grandma's house, and we just had toys everywhere. I had toys that were for road trips that were in little containers that were in a closet somewhere, and I got rid of a lot of stuff. I would say if I had to put a number on the amount of toys that we got rid of probably 95% of our kids' toys. And honestly, I would have gotten rid of more if I had to do it over again. Sometimes when you hear that number, you think, oh my goodness, if you had 20 toys and you got rid of 90% of them, what do you have left? But when you have like 900 toys and you get rid of 20% of them, you still got a lot of toys left. There were a lot of things I kept that I thought our kids would use like in a community area. So at our kitchen table, I kept a lot of puzzles and little like brain flakes and manipulatives and like things that they could do at our table. When it really comes down to it, they love Legos, they love Play-Doh, and they love arts and crafts. And that's really about it. They do all have some toys in their bedrooms that they do play with on an occasional basis. But more often than not, they want to be outside on our trampoline. They want to play games, or they want to do some of those other more sensory activities. So after that initial purge, I could have gone a lot further with the toys than I actually did. When we initially reduced the number of toys that we had, our kids had already had a dramatic decrease in their wardrobes. And I had done our kitchen and other kind of laundry, like towels and things like that. So a lot of the environment, the things that impacted their day-to-day decisions, like where are my clothes and what am I going to put on and how do I find them if they're not in my drawers, which is what happens when you have too many clothes. They end up other places because you don't fold your laundry and put it away. The kitchen was far cleaner than it ever had been because I had dramatically reduced the number of dishes I had to do. So the general environment in our home was changing. When we got to toys and we took a lot of that stuff out, it completely changed the feel of our home. I think that change in environment had a far greater impact on our kids than the lack of choices when it came to toys or the abundance of choices when it came to toys. It really was about the general environment, the feel of our home that changed when we reduced down the toys, we reduced down the laundry. I lessened the cognitive load with decisions in the morning of what we were going to wear and where our clothes were. And I found that not only did my frustration and my need for them to go find something to do, not only did that change, but their need to try and find something to do and not be able to do it changed dramatically. They had a set number of things that they could pull from. So when I was trying to cook dinner or something and they were under my feet and I couldn't necessarily include them in everything, because let's face it, we want to teach our kids how to cook. We want them to be involved. We want to have all these magical moments. But if you are a working mom, you know that sometimes you just want to get dinner on the table and I need you to go find something to do. It's just the way it is. When those times came about, our kids had a small manageable area that they could pull things from so that they didn't become overwhelmed with decisions and options, and they were really able to actually go engage and play. And that changed everything. I know that it can be kind of scary if you are just starting out on this journey to start purging your house of all of this stuff. You can become very afraid that you are going to get rid of too much stuff. But now here, 5 years later in minimalism, I have still not found the bottom of the well of our stuff. So whether it's 60%, 80%, 95% of your stuff, unless you are now living out of a backpack, you're going to keep going when it comes to decluttering. You're going to find new things that you can pass along that you're not using anymore. Your perspective on sentimental items may change. And certainly as you continue on in this process, you free up time and you start looking to fill that time with things like prayer, family time, time in your Bible, going for a walk, strengthening the relationships within your home. You too may find that you start to place a higher value on those things than the things that you decide to keep. Now, if you would like to know more about decluttering regret, you can click the video right up here. I have learned a lot of the hard lessons around regret and how we can better approach that through our Christian faith. So click the video right here if you want to watch that. Thanks so much for watching, and until I see you again, keep fighting the good fight.